Hello, welcome to Storytime. In this ASMR video, I will be telling you a true story. And this time, it is a subject of recent history. And by recent, I mean ongoing. Feel free to fall asleep at any time during this video. Quick disclaimer, this video is for ASMR purposes only. And I guess that also means it's for entertainment purposes only. And the reason I give this disclaimer is because while I try to be as factual as I can be, I do rely heavily on Wikipedia for my information. And while I do use other sources, they aren't exactly peer-reviewed. So, I will link all my sources in the description below, and please take all my information with a grain of salt. But without any further without any further ado, let me tell you about Karl Bushby and his trek around the entire world, basically. So, Karl Bushby is a former member of the British military, and he set off on his expedition that he's calling the Goliath Expedition. He is attempting to travel from the southernmost tip of South America all the way home in the UK without the aid of any transportation. He is allowed to take vacations, whereas if he takes like a helicopter somewhere, then he needs to fly right back to where he left off, and that would be considered like a pause in his journey. But he has to complete the entire journey unbroken, which means he can't complete his journey using any transportation of any kind. He estimated that this would take 8 years. Another source says it would take 12 years, but this could be a later adjusted estimation. I don't know. Like I said, my sources aren't exactly peer-reviewed. This journey would take a distance of 58,000 kilometers. I honestly should have, in my notes, put how many miles that is, but here's a conversion. On November 1st, 1998, he began his journey in Punta Arenas, Chile. Anglophonically, this is known as Sandy Point, and it is the capital of the Magallanes region of Chile, which also happens to be the southernmost region of Chile. He started at a latitude of -53 and a longitude of -71. And his home in Hull, United Kingdom, is about -0.3 degrees and a latitude of approximately 54 degrees. And you might be doing the math in your head like he only has to walk 70 degrees, but he's not traveling this way to home. He's traveling this way. He's traveling basically the entire world. I kind of did that circle wrong. Oh well. No, seriously, he's traveling basically like all the way around the world. He has to travel 289 degrees west and 107 degrees north. And that's just to get where he wants to go. No one has ever done this before. So upon starting his journey, a month in, he's already fed up. According to his book, which I only had a bit of preview of, his diet was poor, and he went on and on about how he hated the wind. The wind is just absolutely awful. I've never been to Chile, or Argentina for that matter. If the wind is as bad as he says it is, I better pack heavy. That's a bad joke. A few months in, after crossing from Chile into Argentina, and then back into Chile, he reached the Pan American Highway, which is actually a series of highways that goes from, let's see if I remember. It goes from Ushuaia, Argentina to Prudhoe Bay in Alaska. And this actually makes his journey a little bit easier because he has a lot of developed area which he can follow. It's not like all jungle. South America has actual highways, believe it or not. But this gives him his path for about half of his journey. 1 year in, he traveled 200, no, he traveled 5,225 kilometers, and this brought him very close to the border of Chile and Peru. 2 years in, he kept going, and he traveled 9,485 kilometers, and this brought him to northeastern Colombia. But this is where it gets a little bit difficult. See, the Pan American Highway is not continuous. Like I said, it is a series of highways, meaning that it connects from here to there, to here to there. It goes all over the place. And by all over the place, I mean literally in one direction. But it does kind of split into two, halfway in the middle. But anyway, I'm going off on a tangent. Karl is currently in Colombia, and he has run out of road. He now has to face the Tapón del Darién, also known as the Darien Gap. This is a very dense jungle and swampland that lies on the border between Panama and Colombia, and it is completely undeveloped. There's no easy road to follow. They're probably like human-made like dirt paths, but other than that, it's just complete wilderness. It's because of how miserable the environment is, this region is basically ungovernable, which makes it home to many dangerous groups, notably the Revolutionary Army Armed Forces of Colombia, which, luckily, Karl did evade. But arguably, even more dangerous than that is the wildlife. There are venomous snakes, crocodiles, relentless bugs. I imagine there's a lot of wind. Haha, joking, it's a jungle. But there are also a lot of environmental obstacles like heavy rain, mudlands, unbearable heat and humidity. Anyway, it's a very, very unpleasant place to be, no matter which direction you're going or what kind of means by which you are traversing this land. It's a little bit easier by vehicle, but not much. Anyway, to get from the Colombian city of Medellin all the way to Panama City, it took Karl 2 months. And the only way to get from those two cities to each other is through the Darien Gap. Or fly. But he wasn't going to fly. By 2001, he was free from the Darien Gap. However, once he was in a relatively safe part of Panama, he was immediately arrested because I guess he crossed into a region where they had a closed border. It was not disclosed in any of the sources where exactly this was, what municipality, what region, but I do know that he was not yet at Panama City. This only held him up for 18 days, so I guess that's why it took him 2 months to get from Medellin to Panama City. From there, he continued along the west coast of Central America, going through Costa Rica, Guatemala. I skipped a few. But he followed the Pan American Highway for most of it, and then kind of deviated from it when at some point in Mexico. Had he continued to follow it, he would have ended up in Dallas, Texas. But he decided to go a little further west from there. And after more than 16,000 kilometers, he crossed the border into the United States in early 2002. And keep in mind, he had been walking since 1998. So about 4 years, almost 4 years, because it says early 2002, almost 4 years it took him to go from the bottom of Chile to the US. After he crossed that border, it was pretty easy to just follow the highway through the US, through Canada, and then into Alaska. One source says he reached Alaska in 2005, another one says it was 2004. I'm inclined to believe that he reached Alaska in 2005, since by December of that year it is known that he was situated in Fairbanks. So, in Fairbanks, 2005, he finally ran out of road. Next up was the Alaskan wilderness. No roads to follow, no development. The Alaskan wilderness is basically the sheer opposite of the Darien Gap. The temperatures can range from 1 Fahrenheit to negative 17 Fahrenheit, and I'm only saying that because because it's Alaska, it's in the US. Converted to Celsius, that's negative 17 Celsius to negative 27 Celsius. And that's during the winter, which he was in. It was December. He also had to cross a bunch of frozen rivers, lots of, snowy lands. If he hated the wind in Chile and Argentina, he was not gonna like the wind in Alaska. There are fewer bugs, so that's a positive. But there are bears and wolves. So, I guess pick your battles. After traversing all of Alaska, he made it to the Bering Strait. No one has ever crossed the Bering Strait in recorded history. And I say recorded history because 10, 20,000 years ago, we have evidence of prehistoric humans crossing the Bering Strait, and it's unlikely that they had much transportation. But I do say recorded history because we don't have the record of any one person, one specific person, crossing the Bering Strait without any form of transportation. Karl was the first person to ever do this. Him and Dmitry Kiefer? That's how I'm going to pronounce it. I imagine he had transportation. But Karl did not. This took him 2 weeks. Only 2 weeks? Yeah. Only 2 weeks. That's pretty good. He didn't go in a straight shot. Despite there being no trees, hills, or animals, because it's just frozen ocean, he didn't just walk from one side to the other in a straight line. He kind of went more north than he needed to do. Then he backtracked a little bit. But after those 2 weeks, he finally made it to Welen in Russia. And at this point, he has traveled over 25,000 kilometers, which is almost halfway. It's very, very impressive. But despite being halfway, it is only getting harder from here. Just like in Panama, the moment he crossed the border and landed in Welen, he was arrested. Apparently, he arrived at the wrong port of entry. This mistake almost banned him from Russia, and with the journey going halfway around the world, you can see why he didn't want to quit there. I mean, who would? Probably a lot of people, actually. It wouldn't be until a year later that he would be able to continue his trek from northeastern Siberia and start walking again, because he had a lot of complications with the Russian authorities. And since he began walking again, he had only done 1,000 kilometers. And 1,000 kilometers is a lot, but compared to the amount he would walk before and the amount that he still needs to walk. This is almost nothing. The next checkpoint was Bilibino, and he ended up in Dvonoye. And I say that with a question mark because I cannot find the Dvonoye anywhere near Bilibino on Google Maps. Maybe it did exist but doesn't anymore. Maybe I'm just not looking hard enough, but I just type in Dvonoye and it brings me to Western Russia, which is definitely not the one. Neither of them are close to Bilibino. In November, his visa expired, so he had to travel back to Alaska with some kind of transportation. Like I said, he can take vacations, but when he returns, he has to start right where he left off. And he actually didn't continue his journey after that until 2008, where he traveled back to Bilibino. No, he traveled back to Dvonoye and then made it to Bilibino. That's what happened. But because he was so delayed in his journey with his visa expiration, the snow had melted, which I don't even know could happen in Siberia. But this made the land become untraversable. It is now mud. It's easier to travel on snow than it is to travel in mud, believe it or not. So he had to leave Russia again because Russian visas don't last very long. They only last like 90 days, and then you gotta wait a certain period to get another visa. I don't know if that has changed at all since 2008. But yeah, it was harder to travel through Russia than it was to travel through any of the other countries so far. It's kind of ironic that of all the obstacles that he had faced so far, the biggest one is a government, not even an environment. Still in 2008, he actually lost a sponsor, making it even harder for him to do his journey. This is because in 2008, the United States economy was struggling from a collapse of a housing market, basically due to a lot of economic rigmarole that I don't quite understand, involving banks and credit organizations. This caused a global recession, so Bushby's sponsors could no longer afford to sponsor him, so they just didn't. Because of this, he spent 3 years in Mexico waiting for more funding. And then finally in 2011, he resumed his walk. And once again, this would not be for long. Due to the 90-day tourist visas, which can't be renewed immediately, he only entered Russia for like 3 months and then left for half a year and returned again. And he did this until 2013, when he received a 5-year ban from Russia. 5-year ban. In my notes, I don't have a reason why. Guess I forgot to research that part. But once he was banned, he protested it. And he protested it the only way he knew how. By walking. He walked from Los Angeles, United States, to the Russian embassy in Washington, D.C. This is a distance of 3,000 miles, or 4,800 kilometers. And then on October 23rd, 2014, he was unbanned from Russia. His protest worked. So, he kept walking, and then in 2017, he finally crossed into Mongolia. And just a bit of statistics, he spent more than 10 years after initially setting foot into Russia to finally reach Mongolia. My source says that he crossed into Mongolia in January. Grain of salt. And this was done after more than 31,000 kilometers. Then on August 8th, 2017, he made it to Mongolia's capital, Ulaanbaatar. And from there, it's straightforward. You notice how I'm picking up the pace in my storytelling just because the journey got easier? So yeah, he went from Mongolia to China to Kazakhstan to Uzbekistan to Turkmenistan. He traveled for 2 years, and in Turkmenistan, that's kind of where he needed to stay because COVID. He put his walk on pause for 5 years. Another 5 years. It's always 5 years, isn't it? None of my sources say where he was during those 5 years. I doubt he stayed in Turkmenistan. He picked his journey back up in 2024, but it didn't go as planned. See, the original idea was to travel through Iran, but he didn't do that because he couldn't get a visa. Plan B was to go up into Russia again and then through Ukraine. He didn't do that either because of the Russia-Ukraine war. So plan C was to swim across the Caspian Sea, which no one had ever done before. He started his swim in Kazakhstan and would swim to Azerbaijan. He swam a distance of 288 kilometers, spanning 21 days with a total of 132 swimming hours. The way he did this is he would swim for 3 hours in the morning, and then another 3 hours in the evening, and then all the time in between he would spend on a stationary boat. The boat would not bring him any further or farther, like further there, farther away. Wow, that's weird. And he, once again, set a record. He was the first person to swim across the Caspian Sea. You might think that swimming for 3 hours isn't that hard. Plus, the Caspian Sea is salty, so, you float easier. Not exactly. So, salt actually draws moisture from your skin. And 6 hours per day is way more intense than most people experience, so it's probably not as easy as you would initially think. And again, first person to do this in recorded history. From here, there weren't any major obstacles, or at least not to the degree that you had in Russia, especially not the degree you had in Russia. And basically the only challenges were the visas, which so far they all have been doable. He got a visa for Azerbaijan, for Armenia, for Turkey. And this is kind of where the story ends, because as of September of 2025, which is when I'm uploading this video, I hope, he's in Bulgaria, which is, considering where he started off, that's pretty good. And he hopes to return to Hull, England, in 2026. In my opinion, considering how things have gone so far, that feels a bit optimistic. I know, European countries are much easier to get visas for, and considering, he's of European descent, it's going to be way, way easy for him. Come on, he's British. He's going to get a visa to frickin' every single EU country. Depending on the route he takes, he still needs to cross into at least 4 other countries. He could go from Bulgaria. Oh crap! I need to do my geography. What is Bulgaria border? Did I say he needs to cross into at least 4 countries? No. That was a poor estimation. He needs to cross into at least 5. He could cross into Romania, then Hungary, then Austria, then Germany, then France. Or you could go into Serbia, then Croatia, then Slovenia, then Italy, then France. I'm predicting he's going to go into Romania. I actually don't know the current route. Romania, then Hungary, Austria. He could also go through Switzerland and then France. I'm definitely assuming that he's going to try to swim the English Channel, which has been done before, actually. So he wouldn't be the first to do that, but that does seem like the easiest route to swim, because how else is he going to get home? But yeah, that is where our story ends. I guess it's not technically over, since his journey isn't over. And I, for one, am going to be monitoring this story very closely as it continues, which I know it will. I hope you enjoyed this video. It was my first ever video, first ever research essay. I don't have any comments to feature, as I didn't really get many comments on my very first video, although I guess you could call this my first real video, because my first actual video was just an introduction. But I do hope to read comments in future videos, and if you want your comment featured, the best way for me to know that you want to be featured is to put in somewhere in your comment !feature me, ! And that tells me that you want to be featured. But as long as you basically indicate that you want your comment featured, then that is acceptable too. But anyway, I hope you all enjoyed watching, and I will see you all in the next one. Bye-bye.